On today's episode of the CLS Experience, we have a very exclusive treat. She's not just a doctor, she's the world's first triple threat in the food and medicine space. Big facts. She's a Harvard trained psychiatrist, a professional chef, a nutrition specialist, and a best-selling author, just to name a few. Her unique approach to mental well being through food has transformed countless lives, and she's been featured on numerous major platforms, sharing her insights on how our diet impacts our brain health, which is extremely helpful and digestible, no pun intended. She showcases the cutting edge science, explaining the ways in which food contributes to our mental health and how a diet can help treat and prevent a wide range of psychological and cognitive health issues, from ADHD to anxiety, depression, OCD, and others. She's just a juggernaut in all facets of life and a terrific human being. Please welcome the brilliant, multifaceted, and soulful, the abundant Dr. Uma Naidoo. How you doing, Dr. Uma?
I'm doing so well, Craig. Thanks so much for having me and for that kind introduction.
My pleasure. I always get a kick out of them. The guests typically get excited. I always say it's your story. You wrote it. I just said it with a little bit of passion. This is going to be so much fun. What I want to do today is just make every second count. And for our audience,
Mhm.
about 6 million now, my best suggestion is to play catch up, do a deep dive, check out
Mhm.
all the unbelievable stuff she has going on, grab her first book, all that stuff. What I think is most valuable tonight is we just have an unbelievable conversation. Before we dive in, we're going to get a little weird. You ready for me?
Sure.
When you wake up every single day, for you personally, what are some non-negotiables for you?
Hmm. Missing my coffee.
Mm,
Like I have to have coffee in the morning. I
same.
love coffee. And by a certain time in the morning, you'll know I'm very grumpy if I haven't had my coffee. So yeah, that's that and water, actually. That and water. Yeah.
Fair enough.
Because always wake up, we all wake up a little dehydrated.
Yeah, and the coffee, it's not even just like the caffeine, it's part of the routine, right?
It's part of the routine, and it turns out that the polyphenols in coffee itself are actually really good for your brain and your body. So it's not really a bad habit. Often in the US, we get a little bit waylaid by what we put in our coffee, but
Yeah. But obviously in moderation, but just to be clear, a cup of coffee a day is a good thing.
it's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Fair enough. I
Just
also
don't add junky ingredients.
Yeah, fair enough. I was checking out some of your content, which I highly suggest everybody do immediately following this conversation. And I saw one other thing that you like to do is start your day off with some eggs as your first meal. Is that accurate?
So I actually don't consume eggs myself. Let
Mm,
me explain this a little bit. I was raised vegetarian. I grew up in a family that was vegetarian, but I'm a huge believer in food equity and that people should make their own choices. I'm never going to be one of those doctors that says, Craig, never look at an egg.
mm.
Or you know what, if you eat too many plants, you're going to get sick. Or if you eat steak or only eat steak, whichever it is. There's a lot of sort of information out there that's very, I think, dividing of people. So the reason I posted on eggs was because I want people to know the health benefits. Personally, I use eggs if I'm cooking. I just don't consume them.
Mm. Fair enough. I'm glad we cleared that up. Yeah, and also everyone like it's a case by case. It's not a one size fits all with nutrition and stuff like that.
You're absolutely right. It's personalized, and it's become so much more personalized in my clinic now.
Yeah, I love it. There's a couple other fun things I want to ask you, but obviously I want to dive in a little bit about the book, which is coming out by the time we drop this, probably in the next week or so in mid-December. And I know that someone like you is very calculated and very intentional. Why this book and this message, and why right now? Why is it so important for you?
For one thing, Craig, in my first book, This Is Your Brain on Food, I sort of laid out the different mental health conditions and how you can eat for your better mental health. But over the last several years, really the large majority of cases that I've seen have been in anxiety. It feels like everyone is anxious these days, but it's also borne out in research. Research done during COVID, published in a high-level journal called Lancet, showed that that COVID and through this area, anxiety disorders, which are the most common mental health disorder in the world and in the US, increased by 25%. So many more of us are anxious, and I felt that people just need more solutions beyond just the doctor's prescription pad. That psychotherapy hugely important, but why not also include a way that you're eating to help your anxiety.
Mm. It's so interesting. I imagine most people, if they were not familiar with your work, they were living under a rock, they probably didn't realize. I think most people might not, that nutrition has a big role in your anxiety or lack thereof. Would you say that most people are not aware of that?
You're completely correct. And most people don't connect food with mental health, Craig. This is the niche that nutritional psychiatry fills. They're usually thinking, am I going to get a prescription? Is my doctor going to send me to a counselor? Food doesn't even come into the conversation. But this is where, unpacking the science of the gut microbiome and science that is new in the last few decades really helps us understand that there's a connection between food and mood. And I often will say to people, listen, if you have a headache, what do you do? And I ask them to walk me through what they do. First, I'll ask them, well, and then they think I'm being silly. Well, the pain is in my head. Of course, that's why I'm taking a headache pill. But when you kind of describe to them, but you're swallowing a pill, the pain is in your head. How do you imagine that it's helping you? It starts to help them unpack that food mood connection. So the food that we eat goes to the digestive tract, goes to the microbiome, gets digested by everything that happens, but also interacts with the trillions of microbes down there. Similarly to how something relieves your headache, food is also very impactful in your body and your brain.
Yeah. This is so good and so informative. I imagine that there's some people thinking right now, oh, this is good. What are some nutritional strategies that I might be able to take that are tangible just from hearing this episode that I can start
Yeah.
to put into practice to deal with my anxiety?
How I like people to think about it is to ask themselves, is there anything I'm eating or drinking post pandemic, through the pandemic, from before the pandemic, that I know is not good for me? I know it's not the best thing, but I'm struggling to kind of change this habit, because if it's not a healthy food or beverage habit, it's likely driving your anxiety. What do I mean by that? Some people during the pandemic began to eat ice cream every night because it was a way to get through. Had a couple of extra glasses of wine at night, when in fact they usually had dinner once or twice a week out and had a glass of wine then. Others were, grocery store shelves were empty, so they loaded up on cookies and candy and chocolates that they thought they were going to run out of. So many people have a sense of something they're doing that is not the healthiest habit, and I ask them to start there. The big categories of foods that we want people to be aware of: the processed, ultra processed, fast foods. Fast foods not only have cooked and fried and unhealthy oils, because they're actually more economical for the companies, but they're worse for us because they cause inflammation in the body. The ultra processed foods, they just are very disruptive to our gut microbiome and many more things. They also set up cravings. They're kind of engineered to be hyper palatable, so we want more of them. And don't get me wrong, they taste good, but unfortunately, if that's all we eat, then it can be problematic for our body and our brain.
Yeah.
Artificial sweeteners, for the most part, the older ones are very disruptive to the gut. And fried foods, the wrong types of fats, trans fats, hydrogenated fats, all of those just are really just driving inflammation in our body. And inflammation is unfortunately what spirals up our anxiety.
Yeah, this is so good. And speaking of inflammation, I saw you also say that like the organ systems are all connected. So as a result, inflammation from your gut is translated to the brain. Is that right?
Absolutely correct. And that's another thing people don't realize. Again, going back to the headache pill, you when you eat something, say I'm subsisting on fast foods, and this is my thing, and that's what I eat for lunch, and then I get a different fast food for dinner. The breakdown products start to cause inflammation in my gut. And as my gut becomes inflamed and I'm feeding the wrong types of microbes, right? There are trillions of microbes down there that are there to help us. But if you're kind of feeding the bad guys, they're going to help us in a not so good way by causing inflammation.
Mm,
And when inflammation gets set up over time, you develop things like what people call a leaky gut. And the medical term is intestinal permeability. And that whole system, that whole ecosystem of the gut brain connection, when the gut is impacted, the brain is going to get impacted, and you get set up for neuroinflammation,
yeah,
which is never good for mental health.
interesting. Okay, got it. Straight off the cuff, you mentioned a lot of people were doing a little bit more than just a glass of wine a day in the pandemic, and I noticed that too. And without being judgmental, I thought that was a slippery slope.
Yeah,
But also, we
yeah.
talked about moderation for a second. I'm just curious, what is your position on alcohol consumption? Obviously, it's not great for you, but what do you think about like once in a while or moderation, or just nobody should do it at all?
So my position on all foods, and then I'll go directly into alcohol, is that I'm here to guide you based on scientific evidence. I also am practical, and I know that a few things. Right now, as far as I know, more people than not drink alcohol, more people than not drink coffee, more people than not eat meat and eat red meat and seafood. Um, so despite the different types of meal plans and foods and diets that are out there, I just want to be more inclusive, but offer people the best tweak on what they're eating.
Mm.
So if you're vegan, I'm going to ask you to up your game in terms of vitamin B12, as well as getting your algal oil supplements because you don't eat seafood, right? But those omega-3s are really important. If you are carnivore, I'm going to ask you to start eating some vegetables, even if you don't like me for saying that. So when it comes to alcohol, I feel in moderation. As a psychiatrist, I have to say, if you see or think someone's running into a problem, try to get them help in a respectful way without judgment. But if you are consuming alcohol, consume clean versions of cocktails, and when you can, wine or whatever it is you choose to drink. Where I think we do get into trouble is mixed drinks with different types of liquors, simple syrup, which is simply sugar,
Yeah.
and just adding different types of alcohol just ups the alcohol level, right? So just a clean cocktail, a spirit with a piece of fruit or a sparkling water, something like that. That's you still enjoy the benefit of the cocktail you like, but have a healthier version of it. And that's my position in it. In moderation, it's not for everyone, and certainly if it worsens your anxiety, it's not for you
Yeah.
because people also have this thing called hangxiety, which is, I had a couple too many glasses of wine during the pandemic and beyond, and I'm waking up super anxious. And that could be a little bit of mild physiological withdrawal in your body too, and dehydration.
Fair enough. What about you personally? Will we ever see you indulging in a cocktail?
Once in a while, it's certainly part of my repertoire.
Yeah.
But
Fair enough.
my go-to is water. I love water, tea, coffee.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm for people having a good time, but just be aware of. There are many facts I can share with you about alcohol. That's why I want people to just drink responsibly.
Yeah. Fair enough. I'm glad I asked you. I saw you also talking about, and to be honest with you, I'm not sure what this is, so I think this would be good and valuable for the audience. You were talking about the topic of insulin resistance. What is that?
Hmm. So one of the so insulin is a hormone in our body that is supposed to really help us with our blood sugar control. And the problem in this country and beyond is that most people consume what we call the standard American diet or the SAD diet, great acronym, but it's also now the Western diet. Most people are eating this way. I think it's hard for us to avoid a processed food, but people who are only eating processed, ultra processed sort of fast foods and those types of foods are just not doing their bodies and their brain good. Um, and what happens is that by eating food that way, we are constantly, say, we're eating a donut for breakfast. Okay, we're constantly getting our blood sugar going high, going low, and kind of in a little bit of a seesaw effect. But it also impacts insulin, and over time, our bodies can stop reacting in the appropriate way, and you develop a condition like insulin resistance. The problem is you could be headed in the direction of type 2 diabetes, and that's why it's important. So metabolic health is really super important. But a very key factor that I uncovered in my research for this book, Craig, is that the centers where metabolism in the brain are taken care of, and the centers that actually trigger or are dealing with anxiety are the same. There's a connection there. And so how we eat is actually directly impacting our anxiety. And so we want to think about the choices we make. And it's not perfect. None of us is perfect. But for the most part, can you try to be on the healthier side?
Yeah. And I think that comes down to being intentional, right? Not just
I
like,
totally agree. Mindful, intentional, making the best choices for yourself.
Yeah. I imagine there's someone listening right now that's probably thinking, can you give me a couple specific foods that I could start to incorporate that will help reduce
Yes,
anxiety and stress? I imagine there's a
yes,
few that you have as go-tos.
yes. Great. The first thing I want you to do is lean into your plant foods because they're rich in fiber and phytonutrients. In the book, I break down a whole section on micronutrients, which is the nutrients we kind of overlook, but that are found in things like leafy greens. Many Americans may not have enough magnesium in their diet or in their system, and magnesium, if you're low in magnesium, it can worsen your anxiety. So I want you to lean into leafy greens. I want you to lean in colors of vegetables. I want you to spend time in the produce section. And remember, you can get frozen cauliflower if you don't want to deal with the whole head of cauliflower. As long as there's no added sauce, sugar, and syrup, it's actually a pretty good and pretty budget-friendly option, actually. That's the first step because it's providing fiber that your body and your gut microbes really need. Then I want you to think about healthy fats from things like fatty fish, salmon, anchovies, things like that, or from plant-based sources, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds. So healthy fats, another huge component. You can also get healthy fats from things like olive oil or avocado. These are good ones to be adding to your diet. Then I want you to think about fermented foods. Fermented foods, miso, tempeh, kefir, kimchi, kombucha. All of these research has shown that starting to incorporate fermented foods in your diet drives down or helps inflammation in your gut and your body. So these are good to add into your diet. Sometimes they, require you to sort of acquire flavor for them, but some people have grown up eating them and they like them. So incorporate those in. And then I'll stop at 4 because there's tons more in the book. But the other one is to add in spices. So I love spices because it's a
Really
no calorie, no added salt way to really flavor up your food. And spices have a ton of both body and brain benefits.
interesting. My fiance, she's obsessed with this stuff, and she's always putting on these crazy spices on the foods. And I always was to be honest, I probably should have just asked her, but I was curious as to why she was doing that. And she's so intentional and tries to eat so healthy. So I imagine she
It,
probably knew what you're talking about right now, that it actually is
some
beneficial.
benefit. That's right. That's
Yeah,
correct.
yeah, it's interesting. This is so good. So much value in a short amount of time. And obviously we'll drop the link to the book and so forth in the notes. I want everybody to grab it. I wanted to ask you,
Thank you.
absolutely. This is kind of a deep question, but I'm pretty sure you know the answer to this, and maybe it could help some people. What is the leading cause of death for American adults?
Cardiac disease.
What could we do to prevent that?
Diet is one of the cornerstones that cardiologists will tell you about all the time. So, in both men and women, cardiac disease is what's killing us. Even during COVID, it was. So, I think that there's not enough I can say about what we can do through nutrition to help any and all of these conditions, including your mental health. Um, One of the other components with all of this is we talked about this, intention, mindfulness, and exercise that you enjoy doing, making sure that you're moving, making sure that you are finding a way to enjoy some form of exercise, yoga. Other things that are important are things like hydration. Dehydration can really make you feel anxious. So simple things like that. Sleep, hugely important. If you're sleeping poorly, it can worsen your anxiety, it can worsen your mood, you can be irritable. More than that, over time, it can even impact things like your hunger signals. So sleep is hugely important as well.
When you say sleep, like is it a certain amount per person? Is it the quality of the sleep? Both?
It's actually both. It's both. You want to sleep adequately, so about most experts will say 7 to 8 hours a night. But I would say, if you are sleeping six sound hours and getting good sleep and feel rested, that's okay. But some people can sleep up to 8 hours, which is great if they can. And it's the quality of the sleep because you can be in bed for 8 or 9 hours and be
True.
waking up every hour
Yeah.
and be totally disrupted, right? So the quality is very important too.
Yeah. And you mentioned exercise. I personally, I love to run marathons. I only recently started
So
running a few years back, but I kind of caught the bug.
cool.
In fact, we just ran New York City last week.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It was a nice battle. Um, Is there something as to too much exercise, or no, just keep moving around and it's good for your heart?
It is something about too much exercise, because one of the symptoms that people may experience when they say have an eating disorder like anorexia is that they over exercise. So they exercise to the point, so in other words, they're exercising so much that they're actually debilitating themselves
Mhm.
nutritionally as well. They're not eating enough. So there's you know, when I say things in moderation, including alcohol, it's really about being kind of sensible and making it work for our bodies. The hard and fast rules, Craig, have failed us in this country. When people are told eat this and not that, they get confused and they eat everything, or they eat nothing, or they get, choices become harder. So I would say in moderation is a good term to use, and exercising, let's say 6 days out of the week, and have one day of rest, or 3 days out of the week. Mostly I want people to get moving. It doesn't have to be every day. It doesn't have to be 6 or 7 days. Recommendation is for like 150 minutes of exercise, but you can split that up into whatever works for you. I have clients who do 20 minutes on the treadmill every day, and they work out with a trainer once a week. I have people who do Zumba classes, yoga classes, and do strength training. So find something that works for you. You like to run, that's one of the things you like to do. I think that's so important, because if you don't enjoy it, it becomes a burden. And that's when it's hard to keep the habit going.
And not only exercise, really life, right? Because
Life.
I reinvented myself in the pandemic to what I'm doing now. And for the first time in my life, I'm in alignment. Before that, I was on Wall Street in a little bit of a dark place. And it was because I didn't really love it anymore. So
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
just food and exercise, really everything you should want.
Everything.
Yeah.
So true.
Yeah. I love it. The last thing I wanted to ask you is they call you the triple threat, and you have so many different things that you're really good at and very multifaceted. What are you most excited about? Of course, the book, it's overthought. Of all the things that you do, like, what are you most passionate about?
One of the things that I really love to do is challenge myself around just delicious food that can be healthy, because I think people have this misunderstanding that if it's healthy, it has to taste like, cardboard. And I just don't agree with that. So I love testing recipes. Someone interviewed me for a media article the other day and asked me to take a recipe and reinvent it. So I'm trying to do that, which is how I spend my spare time. But it's fun. So I love cooking. I love being around food, and I love making it accessible to people in a way that they can enjoy it and still enjoy the flavor.
I love it. Fair enough. All right, last final nugget. What is the biggest misconception that people have between the relationship between our diet and our brain health?
That they're not connected, and that doesn't, the above the head has nothing to do with the rest of your body.
Okay. And that's exactly why they need to grab your book immediately.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
All right, last thing, we'll do a little rapid fire. I'm going to ask you a couple questions, 1 or 2 word
Okay,
answer. We'll have some fun. You ready for me?
I
All right.
am.
Favorite movie?
Oh, you're gonna laugh, Craig. You're gonna laugh. My favorite movie is Pretty Woman.
Classic.
It's a classic.
Yeah, I can't go wrong with that.
One of my favorites.
This will be a good one for you. What would be your last meal on earth?
Oh, see, that would be something that my grandmother used to make for me. Do you know what paneer is? It's made with milk.
I don't think so.
It's kind of an Indian cheese made with milk, but she would prepare it for me in a very delicious way, and my husband makes it as well,
Hmm.
um, and has a fantastic recipe for it. So yes, that would be it.
Okay, fair enough.
It's
Favorite,
prepared with lots of spices and a whole lot of things, but
and I imagine a whole lot of love too.
a lot of love. Yeah.
Okay, a couple more. Favorite guilty pleasure.
Mm. Oh, you know, watching, like, finding a series that I'm crazy about, and then getting into too many episodes of watching it, getting distracted from my work. My favorite series right now is a BBC crimes. It's sort of like it's like detectives. That's it. Detective series, and it's called Midsummer Murders, and it's
Mm,
excellent because it's so clever. It's just so
so
clever.
funny.
So yeah, so
My
I've been
fiance
enjoying that way
loves.
too much.
I understand my fiance loves stuff like serial killer stuff and murders. So I'm like, what's wrong with you? But I understand. Right? All right, favorite
People
workout.
roll their eyes at me, but yeah. Um, you know, some combination of sort of a little bit of strength training, um, and exercise for me is something I have to put in my schedule because as a younger person, I was very, very active. Medical school did me in, um, very much changed that pattern. So for me, I really have to be structured about, weight training, eh, some dance, some yoga, things that are fun are what I try to do, and I try to break it up. So I don't
Right.
think I have one that's favorite. No.
Well, fair enough. Last two. Favorite book, not including yours.
Um, Something I have with me all the time is The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success by Deepak Chopra. Read it as a kid and I still read it. So it's one of my small, short book, but really meaningful.
Yeah, I'm all about the spirituality stuff, and Deepak's great. Last one. Favorite musician.
Oh, that's so hard. Oh my God. No, I can't do it. I have so many.
What's one that comes
I
to
have
mind?
so, well, I love Rihanna. I love, yeah, I love lots of people. Yeah, yeah. That's a tough one, Craig.
Okay,
You got
I
me
promise
stumped.
you. This was awesome. So much fun. Made the most of every single second. Our listeners are very engaging. What's the best way for everybody to support you? Where can they grab the
Oh,
book that would be most
thank you.
advantageous? Do you have like a site with bonuses or stuff like that, or just go anywhere?
Yes, thank you. So, depending on when you see this episode, go to umanaidoomd.com, which is my website. We have a special bonus, a little course that goes with the book, and you will get your copy of the book when it comes out December 26th. So try that out. Also has links to the different bookstores where you can pre-order it. So please do that, and please follow my newsletter. At umanaidoomd.com, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter where you'll get, information about the eggs you mentioned or whatever food I'm talking about that week. But it's really to guide you to know how to up your game, but also has all the information of what I'm up to, so you can follow the podcasts and follow things that may interest you.
Love it. And we're gonna put all that in the show notes. I know you're so diverse and so dynamic. This was so much fun, Doc. Hang up for 1 sec. I want to connect to you after. I want you to know the definition of knowledge, abundance, and unbelievable energy. I could personally guarantee your best is yet to come. Keep on spreading your wings and leaving your mark on this world. So much love and respect for you. Thank you so much for stopping by and dropping
Thank you.
priceless, juicy nuggets today.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk to you.
Yeah, that was awesome. I mean, I could talk to you all day. Let's stay connected.
Definitely, I would love to.